dear sisters and fathers and brothers, to introduce our resource person and welcome them on behalf of the TNCRI.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother. It is my great privilege to introduce Dr. Phyllis Sagano, a renowned theologian, a great woman who has stood for the rights of women all her life, a religious person. Phyllis Sagano is an internationally acclaimed Catholic scholar and lecturer on contemporary spirituality and women's issues in the church. Her award-winning books include Holy Saturday, an argument for the restoration of the female diaconate in the Catholic Church, 2001. Women and Catholicism, Gender, Communion, and Authority, written in 2012. And Women Deacons, Essays with Answers, written in 2017. Women Icons of Christ, written in 2021. Her writing is widely translated. Her best-selling On Prayer, A Letter for My Godchild, is translated in Indonesian, Spanish, and Italian, as well as English. And she edited the Liturgical Press Spirituality in History series. She belonged to the 2016-2018 Papal Commission for the Study of the Diaconate of Women and is winner of 2 Fulbright Awards. Her biographical listings include Marcus Who's Who. Her professional papers are held by the Women in Leadership Archives, Loyola University, Chicago. She holds a research appointment at Hofstra University, Hampstead, New York. It's indeed an honor and great privilege for us to listen to her this morning. It is, in fact, it's 11:30 at night in her time, and she is there to speak to us. Wonderful. Most welcome, Dr. Sagano. We are waiting to listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Brother Martin, I actually muted you so that we don't get feedback. So you'll have to unmute yourself if we're going to speak. But right now, I think it's better if we don't have any feedback. I'm very grateful and happy to speak to you all. I wish I were there with you, but between COVID and travel, that's just not going to happen, I don't think, too soon. I think that what we can speak about is the current conversation about women in the church in general. And I can talk to you a little bit about what's happening with synodal and what's happening around the world, really, in terms of the conversation about including women more into ministry. I was not able to hear Father. Are we okay, folks? Because you're doing things there. Are you okay? Okay. I've muted Brother Martin, so if he wants to speak to me, he's going to have to unmute himself. I took the opportunity to shut down a man. I'm sorry about that, but I think we can. I'm sorry I missed Father Danis's prayer, Father Provincial's prayer, because I would have liked to have heard the way a mystic in the marketplace, which is his term, how that works out in India. I'm trained as an Ignatian director, and I have a great respect for the ministry of the Society of Jesus, but also Ignatian spirituality. And I think that the way I am coming to this discussion is a discussion about freedom. Freedom to be who God wishes us to be. And around the world, women in various cultures are not always treated very well. I've been doing the work about women in the diaconate for many, many years now, and I can tell you that it's not easy to have the discussion cross-culturally. So I don't know your culture, but I do know the history of women in the diaconate, and I do know the way that women, whether we are Indian or German or American or Australian, we are all made in the image and likeness of God. And I say that because, as Sister mentioned, I was on the Pontifical Council Commission for the study of the diaconate of women. And twice when I was seated, actually in the Holy Father's dining room, two different occasions with officers, officials of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, I said, why can't women be ordained as deacons? I don't do any work on the priesthood. And two different men, one from Africa, one from Germany, said women cannot be ordained as deacons because women cannot image Christ. And that to me is just an outrageous and actually heretical statement. We all image Christ. I see Christ in you. I see Christ in everyone as we move through life. So if we can all begin with that understanding that there are people in Rome who say that women don't image Christ, and that to me is a terrible, terrible comment. And I have told them that unless and until they change their minds, I will blame them. I'll blame them for dowry burnings. I'll blame them for rapes. I'll blame them for murders. I'll blame them for all the abuses of women around the world, because this is a very, very serious comment and a serious attitude, and the Catholic Church has no right to say that. And in fact, the Catholic Church does not say that, as you know better than I. So I'll talk for maybe about 20 minutes, and if everybody's still awake by then, we can get some questions in. And I think, as I said, I'll ask Brother Martin to unmute himself so I can hear your questions. It's really about ministry. It's about, and I think it's something I picked up possibly from your website. Or from someplace. Here it's from the German Bishops' Conference today. The German bishops released their report to the Synod. And they wrote, in terms of content, the focus must be placed on the diaconal work of the Church as an expression of an option for the poor. And that's really what we're talking about. The Holy Father always talks about the periphery, and that the center of our church, center of our faith really is the periphery, the people who don't have voices, the people who don't have status. And these are the people to whom you minister so fondly and finely. The many Catholic women around the world really are the mainstays of Catholic pastoral ministry, and they're increasingly frustrated by the Church's response to requests for increased professional presence of women in ministry. Now, I do not confuse religious life and professional ministry in terms of ordained ministry. These are neither do I confuse religious life with dentistry or being a teacher. There is the particular way of living the Christian lifestyle as religious, which is deeply, greatly respected in our church around the world. But religious also minister. Some minister in different ways, more professionally. Some are priests. So a few religious actually are deacons as a permanent state. But women religious are all lay people. And I am not here to say that women religious have to be deacons. No way, no how. But I have met with women religious from around the world who say that because of their pastoral work, particularly in rural areas, particularly where they are leading parishes, it would be very, very useful, very helpful to their ministry if they were ordained as deacons. And to a woman, I met with the women religious who are the NGO, the non-governmental organization representatives at the UN. I had a meeting, and I was with one sister from each continent, and each sister said they weren't interested at all in having any power, and they weren't interested in being priests. They were interested in doing the diaconal work, such as the German synod bishop said today. They were interested in doing the diaconal work of the church, but they also felt that if they were ordained as deacons, their ministry would work better. One sister from Brazil said in South America, the problem is that they are running a parish, but they can't really easily perform the wedding ceremony. They can't easily solemnly baptize. And so what happens is the people go to the Christian community next door, to the evangelicals. and in South America, Catholics are becoming fewer and fewer, while the evangelical and other Protestant communities are growing, in part because there are not enough professional ordained ministers in the Catholic tradition in South America, as you well know from the Amazonia. From the Amazon Synod. 66% of the parish groupings in the Amazon are headed by women. No, I don't mean to say that they all have to become deacons. The Holy Father said in his response in Great Amazonia that these women should be professionalized and become what are called Canon 517, paragraph 2, parish life coordinators, and be professionalized, be given terms of office, and be paid. And I think that's the big point here, is to, as I said at the top, to professionalize the ministry. So let me quickly speak about the fact that the Amazon Synod asked for an increased role, actually, of women in ministry, and possibly in ordained ministry, should the church determine that. As you may know, the Australian Plenary Council agreed that should Rome change the law and allow women to be ordained as deacons, that the Australian bishops would work to incorporate that in Australia. I am told that, and I haven't seen all of them, certainly in the United States, maybe 80% of the parishes that are reporting to the diocese are coming in with a request for women as deacons. And some of them, I'll be frank, they're coming in with requests as women as priests. But my understanding of church teaching is that's a non-starter. And it's something that to me, in my work, doesn't do any good for me to talk about it, because the Holy Father himself has affirmed the teachings from 1994 with Ordinatio Sacerdotalis, and 1976 with Inter in Seniores. But women's issues are coming up in the synodal conversations around the world, and the big problem that is being connected to women's issues is clericalism, and the Holy Father himself has called clericalism a scourge on the church, and I think it's a scourge on the church that's probably going to derail the whole process if it's not really addressed seriously. And by that I mean, in some dioceses, while the comments about clericalism are given in the parish comments, they don't get into the diocesan reports. While comments about the need for women in professional ministry are made, they don't get into the diocesan reports. Now, the antidote to that is the fact, at least in the United States, about 110 other Catholic groupings, such as Future Church and folks like that, had their own synodal processes. Voice of the Faithful had 23 synod meetings, and they're presenting their own reports. So I think in terms of the discernment, and the synodal process is a discerning moment. It's not a parliament. It's not a parliamentary proceeding. It's not a political proceeding. It is a proceeding where through prayer we all talk about how we can best present the Christian message, how we can best be the mystics in the marketplace, how we best can live the diaconal vocation, really, that we're all called to. You are, with your specific charism, certainly called to beautiful ministry in southern India. I was reading, you had a presentation about, I think, Radio Asia with Tamil language, and you have 75 million speakers of that language in your territory. I mean, that's an extraordinary number of individuals that we can tell about Christ, and really, realistically speaking, that's what it's about. I like to use the O word, ordination. But what does that mean? and as I said, priesthood's a non-starter. It is a separate conversation. It's not one that I have. The synod will continue discussing the diaconate. Why? Well, the only person in Scripture who had the job title, if you will, is of deacon, is Phoebe. Saint Phoebe, whose feast is September 3rd. Of course, it's not even an optional memorial because there's an obligatory memorial for Gregory on September 3rd. And poor Phoebe doesn't even get top billing in the lectionary anymore because it stops at the end of chapter 15 in Romans and picks up at Romans 16, chapter 3. So you don't get to hear about how Paul has introduced his sister Phoebe, the deacon of the church at Sancrea, but she's the one that was sent to Rome. And we don't know that he sent her. Maybe she was a businesswoman, was on her way anyway, but she went to Rome to bring the message to the Romans. So as my colleague John N. Collins in Australia says, it's really the part of the understanding of the word diaconia is following after the master in the dust. And I think that's a wonderful image when you think of ministry to the poor, because they are the Christ. We're following after them in the dust and trying to bring the message, like Phoebe, the message of Christ to them. In the West Syriac and East Syriac tradition, which I know is present in your, not so much in your territory, more in Kerala, we have great understanding of women ordained as deacons. I won't put you to sleep with the Eastern history because I think you're mostly Latin Church in your area. But we know that in the medieval church, in the medieval Latin church, up to the 12th century, we had women ordained as deacons. Now it was fading away. It was, as was the diaconate. The entire diaconate was fading away. But we know, for example, Bishop Ottoni in Lucca, in the north of Italy, was ordaining deacons up till the middle of the 12th century. Now maybe he just didn't get the memo, but he was, or we know he had women ordained. Meanwhile, all over Europe, they were outlawing women ordaining women as deacons with various Western councils, medieval councils. But the Maronite Church, which is an Eastern church that never broke from Rome, as late as the 18th century, had a holy synod which was approved in forma specifica. Everything they sent up to Rome with a man named Joseph Azamani, everything they sent up to Rome was approved as it was sent up. And it included two interesting canons. One, bishop, you can ordain a woman a deacon. Two, bishop, this is what she does for a living. So We have, like yesterday in our church, in our churches, we have the understanding that women can be ordained as deacons. I will tell you, just as a footnote, kind of my colleagues, my friends, my sisters in the Orthodox churches, particularly here in the United States, um, are moving actually faster than we are in the West in restoring the tradition of ordaining women as deacons. They the Patriarch of Alexandria in 2017 in Africa, he actually ordained 5 women. We don't know really, there's controversy whether they were subdeacons or deacons. It kind of doesn't matter if you think of them as subdeacons because that's a major order. But anyway, there's the current conversation, the modern conversation. In the 1970s, Pope Paul VI asked at least one member of the International Theological Commission, Cipriano Bagaggini, well, we're going to have permanent deacons, men ordained permanently as deacons in the West, and they can be married men. What about women deacons? And Bagaggini wrote a long paper which basically said, yeah, no big deal. You can have women as deacons. That paper never saw the light of day for 2 years until it was published by a Jesuit, Robert Taft, in Orientalia Periodica Christiana. And that began a discussion where you had basically 2 sides. Roger Grison said yes, and Aimé-Georges Marimort said no. And that is the part of the conversation that turns the church into a museum. The church is not a refrigerator or a freezer where things are and you just leave them there. This is not a development of doctrine, but it's the concept of restoring women to the diaconate is more putting our arms around our beautiful history. And so the point of history, were they or were they not sacramentally ordained, will never be determined because maybe some of them were and maybe some of them weren't. What I can tell you is that we have extant liturgies, and I told Sister Stella before we went on, watch out. She said, you can talk as long as you want. I said, I'll be here for a day and a half. The question about women being ordained, these are the ceremonies that we have. There are 5 of them in the backyard of the Vatican. I have seen them in the Vatican Library. The ancient and medieval liturgies document that women were ordained as deacons by their bishops within the sanctuary, during the Mass, in the presence of other clergy, through the impositions of hands, by the invocation of the Holy Spirit. The epiclesis is very important. The Holy Spirit does all the heavy lifting in sacraments. And so there was the invocation of the Holy Spirit. They self-communicated from the chalice. The bishop put the stole around their necks. And he called them deacons. If they weren't going to be deacons, he would have called them something else. Now, when we have in epigraphical studies, when we have in tombstones, some people are called, the deacon Anna, the deacon this. We know they're women. Were they ordained or were they not? Well, maybe some of them weren't, but maybe some of them were. And that's my point. We will never find the answer. But I will say that if we know, and I know the names of 3 bishops who use these ceremonies, and I don't want to think that any priest, any bishop would go through a liturgy and fake it, okay? That he wouldn't intend to perform a sacrament that is a sacramental liturgy. So the question today is, can women be sacramentally ordained? Well, what do deacons do? Deacons minister the diaconia of the word, the liturgy, and charity to the people of God. To the people of God. It's about ministry, okay? Number 1. Number 2, women can image Christ, okay? Women can work and live and be in persona Christi servi, in a more emphatic, in a more public way, to represent the whole church in sacramental ministry. So I said I'd talk for 20 minutes, and I'm a good girl. I did that. And if brother Martin would mute himself, then I'll be able to hear his questions. Okay? You need to unmute yourself, dear. There you go.
So, dear sisters, any questions you can have. First of all, I request fathers to raise the questions regarding this women diaconate. If you are ready, please come. Please, sister, please come.
Now I can see everybody. Hi. Did I meet anybody in Rome? I was at UISG. Did I meet anybody there? No,
Yes, you,
I was in Rome. Did I see you at UISG? No? Yes? Good. Hi.
Good morning, sister.
you said you have a mark, sister. You can say. Close. A little louder, you can say.
Good morning, sister.
I'm not
Yeah.
a sister, but yes,
All right.
That's-
Nice
I am
listening.
true.
Okay. It was nice hearing women are going to make an emphatic impression among the people by their service. But have you studied the result or the receptivity from the common people,
Right.
or about how women will be accepted as the deacons? Have you made any study?
Well, we don't know. We don't know because different cultures have different views of women. All right. The question about whether a woman can be received as a deacon depends very much on, first of all, the woman, but it depends on the discernment of the church, by which I mean the people of God, on how they could understand the vocation to the diaconate. I don't think it would be a big deal, because what are you thinking about the deacon? What would be the problem? Would the problem be that she would be vested at a mass? Or would the problem be that she was helping and giving food to the poor? You know, the work of the deacon is the word, the liturgy, and charity. Okay, the deacon is to preach the word of God, to lead some liturgies, and to minister in charity. Sister, I don't know your ministry, but I can tell you that, let's make it up. Let's say you minister to the poor in a school, to poor children in a school, and some of these poor children you help to feed. Well, I've got to tell you, on Sunday, I think I'd rather listen to you talking about the gospel. All right, because you can teach me how you are living the gospel in feeding and teaching those poor children. I do think that there is a difficulty in different cultures in accepting women as professionals. Okay, but I'm not so sure it'd be so different. Do you accept women doctors in India? Do you accept women politicians in India? Do you accept women who are architects in India? I think as the society grows, and women are more and more accepted as professionals, I think that begins to happen. I come at it from the other end. I say that until a woman is standing next to the Holy Father proclaiming the gospel, the church does not have the real ability to proclaim that women are not the same as men, but they are equally human and equally made in the image and likeness of God, are equally living Christs. I see you, I see Christ. And that's what we need to teach. It's not about power. It's not about, being in charge. I know deacons that they say the last thing that any deacon is in charge. There's no power. I like to think about the deacon Anna, and actually from the 5th to the 11th century at least, in Rome, the problem with the diaconate was the deacons controlled the money, okay, and the priests didn't like that. The actually in the really early church, when you went to the sacrifice, and maybe in a house church, wherever you were going, and you brought your gift, maybe you didn't have money, you brought a chicken, or you brought a blanket, to give to the community. Maybe you brought something else. And at the end of the liturgy, during the liturgy, there was the procession of the deacons. Somebody brought bread, somebody brought wine. We had the ministry and mystery of the Eucharist. But at the end, you went to the deacon if you needed something, and you got a chicken, or you got an egg, or you got a blanket, maybe you got money. The last person online was the priest to get his pay. Okay. Now, particularly in Rome, but elsewhere, there was another problem. What? We have some 36 or 37 deacons who were elected as the Bishop of Rome. 37 people, men, were deacons and elected Pope, and were never made priests. Okay. This was happening all over the world, all over Europe, actually, all over the Christian Europe. Because why? The deacons handled the money. The deacons handled all the administrative tasks. They had some liturgical tasks, but they really were the executive officers, as you were, of the diocese, and so if you need a new bishop, who are you going to look to? You're going to look to the person, the fella, because by this time women deacons were all in the monasteries. You're going to look to the fella who was already running the show, and the priest didn't like that. So what happened? They made law. They codified the cursus honorum, so that you became a cleric, a tonsure, you were a porter, a lector, exorcist, acolyte, ordained to the major order of subdeacon, and you couldn't be ordained to the major order of deacon unless you were going to be ordained a priest. That's what happened to the diaconate. So we had, from really the 12th century until Vatican II, you have the diaconate as a ceremonial, mostly a ceremonial office. And it was Paul VI. Actually, at Trent, they tried to revive the diaconate, but that got voted down. Who voted it down? The priests. So we're trying to open up the church to more ministries. I think our Holy Father sees ministry like this and not like this. And I think that, if you know what I mean, it's not a pyramid, it's a circle. So now we can have the opportunity of people made women too, lectors, installed as lectors, installed as acolytes, installed as catechists. So will the people of God accept women ordained as deacons? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I don't think that's an argument against trying. Hope so.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Now, where are you looking? You must see me on the screen over there, huh? Because I'm looking at you in front of me. All right.
Yeah, we are seeing you in a screen.
Okay.
We all of us are seeing you in a screen. Yeah. So I have a couple of questions which I collected from on 17th. We had a very big meeting here, the same hall, the sisters, general councillors and the provincial councillors, and some headmistresses, they have gathered here for the training on the catechism.
I see.
So in that closing session, I had opportunity to give an orientation and a valedictory address. So in that, I asked, in group discussion, I asked about the discerning women diaconate. So I just explored, and they have given us a couple of questions. I will just put the questions one by one. The first, sisters and women are the part of the male-dominated church are reluctant to accept the women's ordination. How do you see this problem? The next one, the laity are always looking up to the priests and bishops for spiritual guidance. Will they now accept the leadership of women as a diaconate ministries? Are the women prepared to assume diaconate and priestly ordination at present? What role can we play to facilitate this process in India? Other denominations have women priests as well as bishops. Why is it not discussed in the Catholic Church in India? Women are counted as a third and fourth rank category in the church. What is your opinion on this? Union of Superior Generals in Rome, I just participated in more than 6 conferences. In all its meetings, always invite a women religious or lay women to be a resource person on the current issues and the emerging topics. Why not they speak to the Bishops' Conference of India and other countries? These are the questions I collected from the sisters.
And
On
how
behalf of the-
how many days do we have, brother? How many days do we have to talk? We'll talk a long time.
Only after I collected this time.
All right, listen. First of all, priesthood, it's not worthwhile discussing priesthood now. There is doctrine, okay? There is argument. There is the argument that not having women ordained as priests is settled doctrine. So I don't touch it, all right? I don't touch it. The discussion, and actually, you know who told me this is, Cardinal, he's dead. I can see his face. I'll think of his name. A Jesuit cardinal told me this. He said, the discussion that can be had about women priests is whether or not it is doctrine. That's the discussion that can be held. Not arguing for women priests, but can we decide the level of the teaching? That's what can be discussed. And so he's an American cardinal. I'll think of his name. Anyway, the business about women deacons, there is no doctrinal statement against ordaining women as deacons. In 2009, Pope Benedict XVI modified canon law to make it very clear. You say you're teaching people in a catechism or talking about catechism. I can't think of the number. I think it's 1568. That the new canons in 2009, he did this with a document called Omnium Inventum, specified and made it clear the diaconate is not the priesthood. The diaconate is here, the priesthood is here. It's not this, it's this, okay? And I referenced this earlier. We have 36, 37 popes who became bishops without becoming priests, okay? That's a very important point here because these are separate and distinct ministries. We have to recognize that. I don't have a list of your questions in front of me, but I think that the ecumenical discussion can go forward. We can certainly respect the other Christian denominations that have determined that they can create women priests and women bishops without denying our own understanding of doctrine now. I just don't, it's just not what we do. The problem is that we have inherited an attitude. You say that women are third or fourth ranked. We've inherited an attitude and really inherited a superstition from our Jewish cousins that women are dirty. The problem is that in too many societies, in the ancient world and in some societies today, women are dirty. You know, in Nepal and other places, they still will force, in rural areas, will force women into menstruation huts, where some of them die. You know, if you're there in the winter, and I've read documents where they're there and they have to care for their families, their children, and they die from smoke inhalation because they've got a fire going in the hut. I mean, there's terrible stuff going on. A lot of the reason we have a celibate priesthood in the secular celibate priesthood, now I'm not talking about religious life here, the secular celibate priesthood is because touching a woman makes the priest unclean. This is a superstition, okay? In our church, in the Latin church, certainly, and in 20, oh, let me think, I'd say 20 of the 23 Eastern Catholic churches, you can have married priests. Certainly you can have married deacons. So, and that's been told me over and over. I'm not an expert in the East, but I'm told over and over that the East doesn't have such a hang up about marriage and hang up about women in terms of its secular clergy. And as you know, in the Amazon Synod, there were two big requests, actually four big requests: women lectors, women acolytes. The request for women lectors was actually made by a synod of bishops in 2008, and nothing happened. But the Holy Father did, with Spiritus Domino, said women lectors and women acolytes. And that's important because you have to be a lector and you have to be an acolyte installed before you're ordained as a deacon. And then he invented or he created the installed ministry of the catechist, which would refer to Sister's question at the top. You know, how will the Indian culture receive women as ordained women deacons? It's a process, and I think if you have women catechists installed, you know that part of the language in the documents of the Second Vatican Council said that the reason to ordain men as deacons in a permanent vocation was to strengthen their catechetical ministry with the charism of order. So I just it's not an either or, it's a both and. You know, so when we're talking about whether women can be respected and as ordained persons, I think again, as I said to Sister, if you have women judges, if you have women physicians, if you have women dentists, if you have women airline pilots, you know, I think our church is grown up enough to understand that women can preach and women can minister sacraments. I debated a sister, Sarah Butler, years ago at St. Charles Borromeo Seminary in Philadelphia, and she said, well, there's no reason for women deacons because women deacons of history only ministered to other women. I said, so who ministers to women today? I mean, you know, to me that's crazy. Please repeat some of those questions, so I can make sure I've answered them. Okay, give me the first two. Do you have the first two questions, dear?
Please. Thank you.
Or does
First two questions. Sisters and women are the part of male-dominated church are reluctant to accept women's ordination. How do you see this problem?
I'm not sure I understand the question. And the male-dominated church, yeah, I know. I get along with men okay. I understand about the clericalism. A lot of it is like, oh, come on, boys, would you please, you know, get a life. We're not so threatening, and I think, but seriously, a lot of the problem is poor formation, and that's not your problem. You're all religious. I think there's a problem of formation in the secular clergy around the world. I mean, I'm scandalized that I think your mic is picking me up or something. I'm scandalized that secular clergy are only get a 5-day retreat. I'm scandalized that they don't have the kind of formation. And I will tell you, I was just in Rome at UISG and in May, and I was talking with a new appointee to the Congregation for the Clergy who had run a seminary. He was the head of a seminary for 20 years, and he said the same thing, that he was from Italy, but we see it all over the world. Two problems. One, there's the problem that the individuals who are presenting themselves for priesthood are in the secular world are attracted to a clerical life with an understanding of the ontological change that creates in them an inability to be formed as almost as Christians. I think it's a misunderstanding of the epiclesis when the bishop calls down the Holy Spirit. We all are ontologically changed in the sense that we are new Christians when we're baptized, we're new Christians when we're confirmed. But the ontological change, we're still poor Christians, we're still people, you know? And so ordination doesn't change the man such that he's any different, except that he is different in relation to the rest of us, but it doesn't mean he's above us. And it's all up to you all, you sisters and brothers, to teach these folks how to live and help them. I mean, I hope you are all teaching in the secular seminaries, and I hope you, and you know, because they, I don't know, it's just so sad because they're lovely young men, but something gets put in their head in the seminary that makes them, you know, and you know as well as I, as some of these fellas, you can't talk to them. So so tell me, yeah, what?
This is normal, even if you teach and if you train them, once they get ordained, even the sister is very experienced religious, they consider they are not women, or they are not, they are second, they are below the priest. Then
Right.
attitude change is very, very difficult to, even whatever we teach in the seminary, whatever the exposures they undergo during the formations. Once they became ordained, then when the bishops, even they are not recognizing all the, I experience in European countries, the bishops and other priests always encourage even lay people to participate. In this way, our Pope Francis invited the synodal process church. Is there any recommendation or proposals worldwide to take this women diaconating or women priesthood to change in the canon law? Because whenever we speak about any issues or any recommendations, always they quote the canon law. So recently, Pope Francis reviewed the canon law. A brother can become a superior in the priestly congregations, which the Holy Cross brothers they selected as a brother to be the superior general. So it's a canon law change, brought in the change in the society, even in the congregation. So in the same way, for the laity and for the bishops, the bishops always hold the canon law as a Bible. So the change should take place in the canon law. Is there any recommendation or anything you are proposing to send to the synodal discussion and coming for the final decision.
Well, in terms of the the recent rescript, what he said, and I was tutored. I don't know if you have any Franciscans marching around there, but Michael Perry, who was the Father General of the OFMs, I think, explained it to me. We had a long chat. He was in Chicago and I was in New York, but we had a long chat. And that rescript is very interesting because it does not really say any community, any order can elect a brother as its general superior, but it goes further. The request from them was for a local, provincial, and or the head of a house. What came out was the head of a whole order could be a brother, and that's very interesting. But the caveat is, and with the approval of sickle cell, with the approval of the dicastery for religious life. So, but I think the principle is there that in historically lay-led orders, such as the Franciscans until 1239, when they changed, and others, I think it's a good thing, because a religious community, if it is formed as a lay religious community, internal matters are internal matters, and whether the individual member is a priest or a deacon or a dentist, belonging to the religious community is really what the Holy Father is thinking about in this particular rescript. I can't think of the name of it right now, but but again, he's trying to break open the categories. And on your first comment, however, once they get ordained, they kind of lose their minds, which I'm kind of collapsing what you said, but you know, that is a pity, and that is a problem worldwide. In terms of quoting canon law, Cardinal Gracious is a lawyer, so as a canon lawyer, I can see where that would follow, that they would that the law would be uppermost, and I know it is. And law is to reflect doctrine, but it does not make it. So where were we?
So we are in the synodal process question, which any recommendation you are worldwide correcting or recommending to the synodal process about diaconate?
Well, there is a lot of conversation. I'll tell you what happened in Australia. The Australian plenary council had a proposition to vote for the equal dignity of men and women. Okay, the equal dignity of men and of women, and it passed the whole assembly, maybe 250 people. But then the bishops had a deliberative vote, and it failed. Why did it fail? I mean, I think this is like crazy. The bishops of Australia voted against the equal dignity of men and women. And it failed because of two things: ordination of women as deacons. And basically that was it. So they went back, and after the tea break, 1/4, 70 of the people there refused to take their seats in the plenary council. They said, this is ridiculous. So then there was an emergency meeting, and they changed the sentence that they were upset about. And what it says, as I said earlier, the deacons, the bishops would accept if canon law changed. If the church said about, okay, what is this canon? That's what I was talking about, Canon 1024. Only a baptized male validly receives sacred ordination. When was that canon codified? It was basically codified by Grecian in the 11th, 12th century. Okay, what was happening in the 11th and 12th century? Only a baptized male validly received ordination as deacon if he was going to become a priest. So realistically speaking, Canon 1024 only applies to the priesthood. And it's very simple for the Holy Father through a motu proprio to say, only a baptized male validly receives ordination as a priest or bishop. That's the deal, okay? Now, I have sat with Cardinal Gracious and talked about this because I had the privilege to live in the Holy Father's house for 5 months over a period of 2 years. And I sat with everybody. I mean, I talked particularly with Cardinal Gracious, who's a lovely, gracious man. And he was kind of funny. One day I walked into the dining room and it was crowded, and he stood up and said, "Hey, Phyllis, over here, I have a seat for you over here." So I mean, he's not afraid of me. And I think, brother, to revert to your question about the way priests relate to women, and particularly women religious, I think they're afraid of us. I just think they're afraid of women. And it's a problem of socialization. And I'm like, oh, come on. As I said earlier, come on, boys, don't be silly. You know, I'm not going to bite you. But they're just afraid and can't speak to them. But the point of the canons are there. Okay, the Holy Father has changed one canon to say that any lay person can be installed as a lector or acolyte, and he's moving in response to the Spirit speaking through the Church. And as I said earlier, the Synod is not a parliament. This is not about voting. This is not about running for Congress. This is about how are we going to serve the people of God. And my work has been about diaconia, about service, which is mentioned in relation to women many times in our scripture, many times. Paul uses it particularly. The verb and as I said earlier, the noun to describe Phoebe. Deacon, she's not called a deaconess, she's called a deacon. But we need to remember that the synodal process is not, I have this power, I have this right, I have this idea. It's how do we come together in prayer and understand how better to live as Christians and to teach others how to live as Christians. Because that's all we're trying to do. We're just trying to put one foot in front of the other, and live our lives. But I mean, I think that I think that it's a very exciting time we have. There have been a couple of commissions. I was on the first one. We had 12 people. They were fine scholars. Just 2 of us have done academic work on women deacons, myself and Father Bernard Poitier, a Jesuit from Belgium. We produced a series of documents. The Holy Father gave the history portion, and I'm not telling you this, the sisters told the world this. The history portion of our research was given to the sisters in 2019. They have not yet released it. The Amazon Synod said, why don't you send this back to the commission? And, we want to know more about women deacons. 9 of the 12 language groups at the Amazon Synod asked for women deacons. And the Holy Father said, yes, the gauntlet has been thrown down. I will pick it up. And maybe I'll name some more people to the commission. Well, what he did was named a whole new commission on April 8th, 2020. They met in September of 2021. They have just had another, and I believe their final meeting in July. And these are 10 people. What's the matter? What do you need? Can you hear me?
We are hearing.
Okay. Well, they had their final meeting, but they're not experts. They're more people who are better able to say what does a deacon do. Well, what does a deacon do, and what about this? Can a woman not do? Now, okay. So, but do you have more questions? I'm not sure exactly how we're going here. And if the sisters and brothers have more questions, let me know.
So the final question, we are running out of time. We get upset. Last question, Brother Bhakyanathan, he wants to ask.
Ask him to look at me. Tell him to look at me. Tell him to look at me. No, he's looking up there. Tell him to look at the screen. Yeah, there. Yeah, but
My enlightened point is, we have any longing or Roman prayer.
I can't understand it. Honey, I can't understand you. He has to look at the screen. He has to look the way, yeah. That's it.
My question is, as the canon law, as you have mentioned, the male domination, as canon 10 says, who are the Christians? One is at the age of sufficient reason, and age of 7, and baptized in the Catholic Church. And now we are talking about the women design the deacon. As in church in India, the women are not given a vital, efficient role in the Catholic Church. My point of view, as recently the Pope revised the canon law, the book number 6, the penal law. That means we need to emphasize and make lobby in Roman Curia. That means we need to talk about the 5 congregations, especially the congregation of the evangelization and the doctrine of the faith and the divine worship and discipline of the sacraments and congregation for the clergy. These are the congregations definitely help us go and forward about establishing the women deacon. Otherwise, we have need to make a document as the Brotherhood congregation, the Vita Consagrata, article number 60 talks about the vital role and emphasis on the lay Brotherhood congregation. The same, similarly, we need to make lobby and some powerful theologian in cardinals to accommodate or encapsulate our idea to move forward in the Catholic Church. Do you make any influence in the Roman Curia?
I really could not understand most of what he said.
The only one is there any influence from your side to the Roman Curia to take this point and make it a law?
To make what a law? To make women deacons a law?
Yes. Like priestly.
Well, I mean, it's not that the point is not, there is no law against women deacons, really. There's Canon 1024, but when you specify women deacons and you look in history, there are local synods that say, like the Synod of Paris in 839, that you can no longer ordain women as deacons. But we know that women were ordained as deacons because various synods in Europe kept saying, stop doing it. Okay. But what we have is Pope Gelasius in the 5th century getting very upset because the women are at the altar, and that reverts to the problem of purity. In terms of lobbying, which is a word that I did understand, I'm not a lobbyist. The Holy Father, who I saw a month ago, has encouraged me to keep doing my work, to keep doing my studies. He held both my hands and said, "Please keep doing your work." But it's not. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm a teacher, and I write, and I'm more interested in trying to hear the voice of the Spirit through you, to see the work of Christ through you and the sisters and brothers who are there, and to see how we can best represent Christ to the world. To me, we are not the majority. Christians are not the majority. There are more people who are not Christian in the world. And so when the church says that women cannot image Christ, when I have somebody from CDS saying that I cannot image Christ, I'll tell you what happened when he said that. I said, watch me. Yeah, women can't watch me. And I wrote this book, okay? Women Icons of Christ. You can't tell me that. But when the church says that, or when people in the church say that, and clerics, particularly some of these young fellas, when they say that, they are damaging not just the sisters and other lay people, they're damaging every woman in the world. They're the Pope, our Holy Catholic Church has a big voice in the world for morality and for recognizing human rights and the dignity of people. When the Australian bishops vote against a document that's titled The Equal Dignity of Women and Men, what are they doing? What are they thinking? And so, yes, I know people in the congregation, in the dicasteries that you mentioned. I have spoken to the heads of some of those dicasteries, but for me, it's not a political discussion. I know Rome is very political. For me, it's almost, if I would think of myself as a journalist, what a journalist does is listen to what is going on. And in my writing, I'm not a journalist, but I try to listen and understand what is going on. I listen to you. I listen to the sisters at UISG, talking to people. I can explain. I explained to Cardinal Gracious over meals. I explained to other cardinals over meals. Some gave me a lot of pushback from certain countries. Others, we kidded around. They wanted to take me home and make me a deacon. So it just depends on. It depends on how. It depends, and the Pope is listening. He's listening. What he wants to do is hear the voice of the Holy Spirit. He does not want to hear the voice of a politician. So if you know anybody in the dicasteries and you want to call them up, go for it. But and I'll send you my books and you can send them to me to them. I can't go without making a plug for a book though. This is Women Religious Women Deacons, and it's available online. And it answers the questions about what happens when a woman religious who might become a deacon. But I could just as well write another book, Women Religious Women Dentists. And that's the way I'm thinking about it. I'm not confusing. I wish I could write it in Tamil. Tamil, is it?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. In Tamil.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I can't. And there's another book, which is a children's book that will be in Vietnamese and Spanish. It's called What's a Deacon? And it talks about, this isn't mine, this belongs to a sister. But listen, brother, thank you so much for the opportunity. I don't know the names of the sister and the brother in the blue shirt, but I thank you too for your questions. And I thank you all for your attention. I wish you were looking at me instead of at the screen, but I'm really grateful to be with you. I really am. I wish I were there with you, but
Thank you, Sadhana, for your nice presentation and discussion and deliberation on the questions and the queries and the clarification raised from our side. On behalf of the Tamilnadu Conference of Religious, we extend our sincere thanks and gratitude for you. Even you are talking very clearly and very proudly during the night. Thank you very much. Have the same spirit and let us give a big, you can see all the students.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.